let's first see that the video is showing. Hopefully. Yes, at least I seem to see it, so it's good. Then let me also add a link to the announcement post, so if you want to check any of the supplies, they are there. But still a couple of minutes before the time is right, so you have enough time to grab a cup of tea or coffee or whatever beverage is your cup of tea. So let's wait some time. Today I'm mainly talking in English, but if there's some Finnish viewers there, you can ask questions in Finnish as well, as always, and I will answer broadly with the two languages. So today I'm making something like this. I actually got the same colors here on the table that I used in this one, but let's see how it goes. Then if I decide to alter something or just go with the flow. But with acrylic paints, some stamps, and then paint markers. Like these. I have quite a few paint markers. Of course you can do with a lot less as well, but I'm hoping to share a couple of tips. Hey Jana! With them. And let me just say a couple of words in Finnish at this stage, and then I'll go back to English. Heipä heijasta! Elikkä pääasiallisesti siis tällä kertaa hööpöttelen englanniksi, mutta kuten yleensäkin, niin kysyä saa suomeksi, ja mä vastaan todennäköisesti sekä suomeksi että englanniksi siihen, niin jos jotain tulee. Mutta pääasiallisesti tosiaan hölpötän nyt tällä kertaa enkuksi. Tämmöistä arttisivua on tarkoitus tehdä, akryylimaalit, leimat ja maalitussit käytössä tällä kertaa. So, hello, good evening or day, depending where you are. We are soon starting, and the topic kind of is the paint markers. I got asked to do a live using paint markers, but I don't use them that, let's say, many ways. I usually just doodle with them, but for this live I tried to think a couple of more things that you could do with them, but when it comes to paint markers or techniques with paint markers, I'm not an expert, because I usually just use them for this, for doodling. But hopefully you'll still get some ideas from this live. Okay, it's 8, so let's get started. So let me move this aside, and I have a new journal, but we don't need that yet, because like so often, maybe I'll put this here so you can maybe get a little peek out of it at least. Well, not that much, but you can kind of see that it's there. But yeah, like so often with my journals or even cards, like my Mia, hey Johanna, I'll start with a plain white paper. And this is Fabriano cardstock, the stuff I usually use. Heipä hei Satu! And I've cut it in half because I don't need the whole sheet for this one, and there's a reason I have the other there, because it's going to be my palette for the first layer. So kind of I'm getting two two sheets in the price of one in a way. So first I'm adding some acrylic paint. This one is fresco finish from PaperArtsy Magic Moss, but again it could be anything, any kind of acrylic paint. And this way of applying it, I need to thank, oh gosh, I can't pronounce her last name, but Iris Fritschi-Cussens, probably saying her name all wrong, but she had this idea of brayering acrylic paint, or was it gesso, in one of our tutorials, and that kind of blew my mind because I often use paintbrush to apply the paint, and this was like, okay, gosh, of course you can use a brayer for that, because then you get this really nice kind of a grungy layer. It's not even, it's just having color here and there, so that's kind of really nice way to start. I'm using the other part of the paper kind of as my palette, getting the paint to my brayer and then applying it to the other one. Not sure though which one I will use, because, well, or actually, of course, I'm going to use both, but today I'm probably working on this one. Let's add a little bit of that darker green yet. I'll put it here, and then again. Like so. So it's not an even layer. It's a kind of a haphazard way, because there's some of the white still showing, and that's okay. And this one I'll save for another journal page. It's always the hardest part is kind of how to start. So that's a really easy way to start. Next, let me put this a little bit here so maybe it will be visible. Next, I'm adding some stenciling. This stencil is by Stencil Girl, and what I really like about it is it has these ATC sized bits. So you could use just one pattern, but I also like to use it as bigger stencil and get kind of a variety of different patterns to play with. If you're just joining in, hello, good evening, day, morning, depending where you are. I'm just kind of starting. And with stenciling, not too much paint. So I first dabbed to the kind of barrier part of the stencil to get the paint a little bit evenly distributed to the sponge. Moikka moi Päivi! Kertauksena vielä siis silleen, että pääasiallisesti hörpötän nyt tosiaan enkuksi, mutta kysymyksiä saa esittää kuten aina niin suomeksikin, jos joku menee ohi. So just a little bit of pattern here and there. Maybe some dots there. Maybe I'll add some more dots a little bit more to the center, so maybe they will be visible in the finished page. When I'm doing background work or art journaling for that part, I'm not kind of worried to cover something because it's all about the process. I'm first adding something and then I'm adding something on top, so if I would be really worried, then I couldn't get anything done. So now we have kind of the background ready. So we are going to cover this, as you can see from here. Next, I'm needing a stamping tool. And, well, there's a reason why I suggest using a stamping tool instead of just a stamping block, because I'm going to need to stamp to the same place twice and exactly the same place. If you have clear stamps, you might get away with just using a stamping block, because then you can see where you're stamping. But especially with a kind of a red rubber stamp, as these are, then getting it perfectly aligned would be quite difficult. So a stamping tool is really handy. I'm now applying the ink to the stamp and being a little bit haphazardous with it, because this first stamp is going to be just kind of the sketch, so it doesn't have to be perfect. Well, maybe a little bit more then, because I'm losing the hair design, and now hopefully I'll get it to the same place. Yeah, better. When I then stamp it again, then I need more. Hi Marina, hello. So nice for you to join, thank you. So this is this kind of a sketch, so don't be alarmed. It looks really spooky. As it's partly on top of acrylic paint, so it's on a non-absorbing surface, so I'll heat it just in case. Then you can see from this that there's kind of this loose doodling behind her. So I'm doing that now. So just some random words. I recommend words, because if you just put loops, it looks like you're just drawing. But if you are, for example, doing your grocery list in a really loose way, it looks more like there's actual letters than just squiggles. Like that. I wrote milk, bread, toppings several times, but you can't really tell. It could be lyrics, it could be actual journaling, what you're feeling, but when you use it kind of this, how could you say, a doctor handwriting, nobody can read it. Even I can't read my own handwriting when I'm doing it like this. I have no clue what I wrote here. Just giving it a little bit of dry. Then I would need the first marker. This one is from Molotov and it's Skin Pastel, the name of it. The nib was a little bit wonky, so I washed it before the live. So now the first thing that's coming out of it, the marker is a little bit diluted, but it will work anyway. The other eye is somewhere there. And then her neck. And I'm now not worrying about coloring over the lines because I'm going to stamp the image again. This is kind of just guidelines for me where to put the color. No worries, I know you were attending Tim's live, Marina. I was looking at that well, but then I needed to get ready for my own thing. It's funny how I seem to pick the wrong dates in that way. So now let's paint some sort of a gown for her. Again, not worried about covering the previous layers and not too worried about how eerie or spooky this is now looking. You probably have heard the phrase of the ugly face in projects, so this is probably the ugliest it will ugliest it will get. But not to worry, it will turn out fine. It's kind of just pushing on forward past that ugly stage. Then let's add some colors to the owl. Again, I'm just covering everything with the paint marker. And then adding the details after stamping. Now let's give it a quick dry. Salla is saying that she hasn't got any mixed media experience, so it's really nice to see how I work. Yeah, it's usually like this. Of course, with a live project, I then have some kind of reference, let's say, project I have previously made, and then I'm trying to imitate that, get it done the same-ish way. But even with my videos or something, I might gather some supplies that I'm going to use these for this page, and then let's see how it goes. I don't usually plan very much ahead. So now let's see if I can manage a nice clean stamp. So now the stamp is still in the stamping tool on the same place, so it should align perfectly with the one I kind of did as a sketch. Now I'm applying much more ink than in the previous run, when it was just to have sorry, some kind of placement of the character. But the nice thing with the stamping tool is, if the first one is not good, not black enough, not crisp enough, then I can go over it again. Oops, now I have the ink in my finger. Let's see if I manage to get it. Yep, getting there. Just need some more to the eye. So I won't, sorry, smudge it. I will again heat set. Usually when I'm doing, doing stamping, I don't use even a stamping block, but just the stamp as it is. I have heard people calling it, mixed media stamping. But if it's text or if it's for this kind of purpose that I need the layers to align, then I'm using a stamping tool. Come on, stay put now. Now that it's a little bit warped, let's see if it's going to be nice or not. Still not getting the perfect eyes. I'm doing it one more time, and then we'll just go with the flow. The other option, if you don't have a stamping tool, is to then use collaging instead of stamping. I'm now standing up to get a really good pressure. Oops, it doesn't know it moved, so probably it's not good. Let's see. But yeah, you could stamp the character on top of tissue paper and then use a matte medium to collage it on top. So then you could get those crisp lines without having a stamping tool. And now, like I said, it moved a little bit, but we'll go with this. Hienoa, Satu. Tää oli tosiaan mulle ihan mullistava juttu, että sitä voi niinku, siis niin yksinkertainen, mutta niin loistava. Satu was saying that she needed to go ASAP to add something to her little order from a Finnish store because of the way I used the brayer, and it was not me who invented it. I got it from Iris, and I was really blown away by that technique. I didn't know what sometimes I re-ink the same zone stamp and never turns out. Yeah, it's that because there's the little hinge. So, for example, in that tool, for example, I noticed that sometimes it moves just slightly in its hinge, and if it's like a background, for example, here in the text, where it's not perfectly aligned, that's okay, but in the eyes it's not that good, because there you would need to have a really crisp image, but it's kind of these 1 millimeter off or even less, and then you can actually see that there's something wonky. So, and I'm not a good stamper by any means. I'm just kind of having fun with the stamps. So, but in this kind of technique, I would love to have a crisp image, and with this, I got it. Now, of course, when I'm trying to show it, it doesn't work quite as nicely, but hey, it's okay. Okay, let's do this one more, and then I'm thinking. And if you're wondering why I'm heating, it's because of the acrylic paint underneath. It's a non-absorbing surface, so Archival ink needs a little bit of heat setting on top. Now let's go to turn this lady into a more nicer looking one. let's start with this. So in here I tried to do a gradient kind of thing. So the thing with any kind of paint markers, I have mostly Posca, but I have a couple of Molotovs as well. So the thing is to shake them, because the pigment gets kind of land in, depending how you store them, to either the bottom or the lid, or anyway. The best way to store a paint pen is horizontally, but if you store them like this, you just need to shake a little bit more, because then the pigment, the heavier stuff gets to the bottom. So let's add that, and then add that, and then let's mix the two. So I'm able to mix the two colors on top of the acrylic layer and get kind of a gradient look. The difference between this one and this one is that I used a paintbrush on top, and it was the dirty paintbrush with black gesso. So let's not do it with this. If you then end up having a kind of a stained paint marker, you just use a little piece of scribble paper and get rid of the paint. But you can use these kind of gradient things, but it needs either a really kind of sleek paper to work, or then something blocking the paint to move to inside of the paper, or getting absorbed to the paper immediately, so like an acrylic or gesso layer. The other thing, well, let's do something funny there. Let's use this green one here. The other thing you can do, again on top of non-absorbing surfaces, is when the color is yet to be dried, you can just pick a paintbrush and use them as kind of a paint. And I mixed the two colors together here. Posca reacts with water even after drying, so that's something you might want to keep in mind if you're working on top of a bigger piece. So they are not perfectly acrylic, even though they are kind of acrylic. And then let's add some details. It was the little cheeks there. And then the owl has some kind of legs and a little peak. What's that thing called? But the main thing I like to do using paint markers by far is kind of just doodling. It's often that I pick white or black Posca marker at the end of the project and then just add different kinds of little doodles in there. Oh good, something new for Satu. Yeah, Posca markers, if you put them, for example, if you're painting rocks, so a non-absorbing surface, and then you are adding a coat of acrylic on top, trying to get them a nice glossy finish, for example. If you're using a brush, the colors will start bleeding. But the funny thing is that you can iron them, use them on top of make your own shirt, for example, and when you iron them, using as much heat as the fabric can handle, then they are heat set, and then you can even wash them without the colors bleeding out. It's a great many washes that they will endure after that, but just something you might want to consider. Now she has really kind of dead eyes because there's not the glimmer of light yet, but I'm going to add that. It's now still wet, so now I don't want them to mix, so I'll just heat them. Actually, there's a little puddle. So let's add a little bit more black, kind of trying to get her eyes a little bit better looking, because the stamping gods were not at my side this time. Actually, now I really like her look, because the not so accurate eyes and me doodling them makes her look totally different than here. I'm thinking that now she's looking a little bit sorrow, like a little bit moist. Moist-eyed. I'm not sure if that's the word even. But especially now that there's some details missing from her hair, I can then just grab a marker and kind of doodle some locks of hair for her. Or even if she did have those, I could doodle. And then I usually really like to do these kind of dots or dashes to the background. Just doing, I think the embroidery version is called sashiko or something. Just these areas of dashes, adding a little bit of interest to the background. And also that gives me an opportunity to add another color in, so it's not going to be overpowering, just a little something to add. Then let's kind of tie in the dress. Most of my pens, like I said, are from Posca. And this particular size is my favorite when I'm needing to do thin lines. The 1M, and especially this nib. There's two Posca markers that have the same 0.7 size, but I really like this bullet kind of tip. But of course that's kind of a taste thing. You might like the other one better, but to me this nib is the perfect, because it gives me the opportunity to kind of play with the line, because depending on the pressure and the angle, I'm able to produce different types of lines using the same marker. Just adding a little bit of doodling here and there. So when I got asked to do a live with the paint markers, this was the reason I was a little bit hesitant. I loved the idea, but as I usually just do this, doodle, doodle, doodle. So I'm not sure if it gives you that much new knowledge. And now I would love to have a white line to it, but like in here with the gradient, I'm not going to add the white line immediately because otherwise I get the colors mixed up. So again, we need a heat tool or then patience and wait. The doodling part is something that I could do long, just adding little details here and there. Especially with this kind of a character, it's fun to add and keep on adding different things. And the little four stitch line, I'm not sure if I'm saying that even correctly, it's also handy. I sometimes do use sewing machine also to make the stitch lines, but if I'm in a hurry or if I'm a little bit hesitant to actually put the work under a sewing machine, I might just do this. I grab a marker and then draw the lines so they kind of trick the eye. There we go. Now let's do some splashes. I'll move this aside and let's see how this goes along. Also, I'm adding a little bit of like a mask for her, so she's not getting a big blob of color on top of her face. One thing is to kind of, well, now it's over, because when you start using a paint marker, you need to, well, shake it, but also to press it to get the paint flowing. And after that, usually you don't have to press it ever again. Of course, there's exceptions. Sometimes the surfaces you're working on are more absorbing than others, and you need to have a little bit, more paint flowing from the pen. But if you do it regularly, let's say this happens, so the paint starts just flowing too much and ends up as a puddle. But if you want big blobs of paint, you might want to pump it a little bit before adding the splashes. But even straight on from the marker, not pushing an extra amount, you usually get something, at least small ones, when you start hitting it. Not coming now. So a couple of pushes and here we go. It kind of just releases the paint. I usually use just acrylic paints for splashes, but this is a fun technique you can use if you are, for example, traveling and don't have paints, only paint pens with you. So let's dry the blobs of paint. Did you have any questions? almost done. Some of them might smear, but let's do that. Thank you, Marina. Now let me get my paper cutter from underneath everything, because now I'm moving this to my journal, and I actually have the measurements here, so let's see, 11.5, so there's plenty of space. Just hopefully, let's see, turn that off, and then 11.5, quite center. And these, you probably want to save these as well, because they are good layering material for other projects or collages or starting off points, using that as a base for another card and then adding stamps, for example, on top. 18.5, so let's first trim that, then see, probably cutting her head off, no. Maybe I'll go with that. She's quite nearer to the edge this time, but let's do a little bit of different than the first project. Oops. Then the journal. Let's start the journal with her. And then double-sided tape. I often use, I should really say I only use ring-bound journals, because otherwise my style of journaling doesn't work. The kind of bound journals usually start to be really, well, they don't want to close anymore. And that's partly because, I'm not sure why, but I almost never ever journal onto the actual page, but instead insert a piece of cardstock I somehow started. It could be just adding a couple of layers of paint and then putting it in and continuing working on it onto the journal. Or then it could be almost a really finished page, or there's some variation, but usually it's always something added inside. And even with the ring or the wire binding, the spiral binding, this happens. So they are really, really kind of dimensional. And I love that. When a journal looks like that, that's a goal for me, really. So almost, okay, now I put the reference away. I think it's handy for you to see kind of them side by side. So there's a couple of details missing from this that I have in this. And while I was making the background doodles, in the bigger picture, these little kind of raindrop thingies, kind of stitch line or falling rain, is something I then did when she was already in the journal, so I can kind of handle the size or the placement of the drops or lines more precisely. Yeah, they are almost like twins. Not identical, but That's kind of fun in a way because they are done using the same stamp and even the same colors. But because of the doodling or the little details I did to the face and, well, the dress as well, I could have used totally different colors, for example, and make them drastically different. But that gives them both a little bit of personality. And here I have these dots kind of present, and here they are on the side. So maybe I'm highlighting them here as well, kind of the same thing, and then continuing. And now I'm thinking I'm adding a couple of here as well, kind of balancing that edge just a little bit. Then, because, sorry about the noise, what I love to use as kind of a jumping off point for journaling, it might be the whole journaling or then it sparks some idea, but it's actually these stickers, and this one is actually a Christmas pad. But I really love the sayings here because they are not connected to Christmas. Like there's, well, there is Santa Claus, but not all of them are out of Santa Claus. So it's something that can be used year round. So let's see. And all you smiling merry folks, maybe. This is jolly enough. This is jolly enough. Let's use that one. And then maybe something to continue it. Wonder of Wonders. Mildred. Priscilla. Maybe I'll put just a Mildred there. This is jolly enough, Mildred. Because by combining the other thing I love to do, let's see if I would have something here. Not finding a page, but sometimes, oh, there. Me Bee Night Owl. So it's made out of me, be, or become, or something. I've cut the rest. And then just adding these words and making a little kind of a dada kind of poem. So there might be just a random words there that then kind of make up a story. So that's something I like to do when journaling. Sometimes it's actually me journaling, but mostly it's more like visual journaling in a way. So now we have the journaling part, some doodles. Let's add some white dots here and there, kind of layering those colors again, but this time I didn't need to use the heat tool because I was doing all other stuff in between and dabbling. So these are now dry, so I can layer them. And I'm now hoping that you stick through the ugly face, because, well, I don't know about you, but to me she's not looking ugly anymore. But there was that stage when you think, and even I could think, well, I've been doing all sorts of mixed media projects for a while now, so I kind of know that just push through, it will look fine in the end. But the stage when her face was just a blob of color and her dress another blob of color, honestly, that looks like nothing will come out of it. But then just push through, add layers, refine, collage, whatever, it will make sense after all, but you just need to kind of get through all that ugly looking face. And even though I said I love this thin Posca, I'm now using just a black ballpoint pen to add little like really crisp fine lines. Here I also kind of repeated the journaling on her dress. I'm not going to do it here. I'm not feeling that. I actually feel that I should add some blue here. But I don't have blue at hand, so let's put this one instead. Just some dots. This is something that's really kind of, I'm not sure if I'm saying the word correctly, meditative. So you can just have fun adding the little last details. Also, that's another way to kind of prolong the project being ready, because you can always add a little bit more and a little bit more. But I'm thinking now she's done. So I hope you like the live. There's some tips with the paint markers. Like I said, doodling is the main way I use them. So that's not a new thing, but maybe something about the doodling sparked your interest, or then the couple of techniques I then added to show you something a bit more. So hope you like the live. If you have any questions, just leave them to the chat and I'll get back to you. And I'll say a couple of words in Finnish and then just wrap up. Kiitos kaikille, kun tulitte. Jos on jotain kysymyksiä, niin ei muuta kuin jättämään niitä tuohon chattiin. Tosiaan niin kun näistä pyydettiin liveä ja mä en niitä kauheasti muuten käytä, kun tosiaan ihan vaan tollaiseen riipusteluun sinne tänne. Mutta muutama sentään tekniikka keksin, mitä itse olen joskus käyttänyt tai tiedän, niin vähän monipuolisempaa. Ja tosiaan sitten aina sen ruman vaiheen yli vaan härkäpäisesti mennään, niin kyllä sieltä jotakin syntyy sitten loppuvaiheessa. So thank you so much. Thank you for joining, and I'll be seeing you next month. And as we are seeing next month, then I'm needing to say Happy Easter if you're celebrating, because we don't see each other before that. Eli ihanaa pääsiäistä kaikille. Good night. Thank you. Bye.